Hi, I'm Rex Branson. I'd like to welcome you to another edition of Woodcarvers Corner. I'm here at my studio again on Grand Lake, and our subject for this particular segment of Woodcarvers Corner is going to be again on another cottonwood bark. When I'm out at the shows around over the country, I have so many requests, do I have cottonwood bark Indian tape, or do I got a mountain man tape, or various subjects, and so my cameraman David Bomar and I have decided that we're kind of doing a series of cottonwood bark. Just earlier in the week we went ahead and shot a new one on a full headdress indent, and so now in the series of the cottonwood bark ones we've decided to add in our edition of a mountain man. Now it happens that we don't have the particular finished mountain man that we're going to do in this segment, but you'll see it on the tape. But one of the close ones that we have is this particular guy here. He's more of a pilgrim or a preacher type guy, and the only difference between what we're planning with a mountain man, maybe with a rifle or something, the only difference will be we're going to put on a coonskin cap, because I have had several people ask me if I would please do something on a mountain man or something that they could use like this, or a Viking. So we're going to basically on this edition be covering the face and of course what we could do to read the cottonwood bark. Now what's so neat about this cottonwood bark is it's a lot like driftwood in the fact that each and every piece is totally individual. When I go out to the bark pile, for instance, I could spend an hour out there inspired by each particular different piece. And what we'll do is look at this board here for just a second and see that, for instance, I've picked this one as an Indian face that I've done and kind of fit right in the bark. And this one I've added an eagle with an Indian with a shield. This one has a little bit of difference with some braids and stuff. There's such a wide variety of subjects that you could be doing. We're into some tree trolls or smiley face type guys that you can see here. And here's another of the full headdress indents with a hand in there. But we're going to teach you on this particular segment of Woodcarvers Corner how to carve a good mountain man out of a piece of bark. And my next little segment is going to be on learning to pick the piece, how to fit the subject into it, and read the character of each individual piece of bark. One of my most favorite things to do is to get out into the bark pile or the driftwood pile and just start thumbing through all these pieces and reading each individual character. And you really have to, at that point, let your artistic juices flow, so to speak. And you woodcarvers, we're artists, too, not only craftsmen. So I want to talk about reading various pieces of bark here. And for instance, this bark has a good solid area in the center right here. It's a giant, these are pretty big pieces of bark. Y'all will never ever find pieces of bark this big. This is a good 5-6 inches wide and a good 5-6 inches thick. These are my own personal pieces that I've picked up. A lot of people ask me where I get my bark at. Well, I get this cottonwood bark wherever I can find a big dead tree, and I've found it all the way from up north, the northern states, all the way through over into Colorado. I've even found some in northern New Mexico. I picked some up in Wyoming, up around Gillette, Wyoming and places. So when I'm out traveling to seminars and stuff around over the country, I usually have my eyes open for a big giant cottonwood that's dead, that the bark's falling off from. Because y'all have heard that old cliche that tighter than bark on a tree. Well, I'll guarantee you cannot get the bark off from a live cottonwood tree. You've got to let it die or find a dead one and, of course, go in and collect the bark. So I spend several hours out in the woods, and there's no sense bringing home junk bark either, students. If you're out there, find and bring home only the best. I've learned that from my own experience. I carry a bunch of junk in out of the timber, spend all day, and then end up burning half from it in my stove. So same way when you're collecting driftwood on the lake. Be very selective of what you ever carry out of the timber, because so much of it ends up to be junk. Okay. This particular piece has a good area right in here. It's a good wide area, and I could maybe put any kind of a subject in there that I want. But I would want to be real leery of some of these cracks, and for instance you can see there's been some trauma to the tree in here. But any subject could fit. I could maybe put a buffalo or a wolf along with an indent up on the top. While I'm kind of stumbling through the bark pile looking, I might pick up another piece like this, and I might say, well, it's got a wonderful area down in here for whatever my subject's going to be, but it's got a lot of trauma up in the top. So where these short segments are up in here, I could maybe do, I don't know, an owl or something that would kind of go together with your central subject. You know, maybe you're doing an indent here. Maybe you could carve some Mesa Verde buildings or something, which I've done that pattern several times, which is real nice. But you, like I say, you about have to let your artistic juices flow. Sometimes when you're out in the bark pile, I'll find a piece like this that has multiple pieces and it's stuck together good on the back where they're not going to break apart. And here's a good opportunity to do a composition of subjects that complement each other. You know, maybe you'll do a Gold Pan Dan or a Chuck Wagon guy or a Western, maybe an indent here and a mountain man here, and caption them Blood Brothers or Brothers of the High Ground, or I could put an eagle or a wolf on some of these things that you see. A lot of times I may just capture something in the bark that really turns me on, so to speak, you know, and that may be the only reason why I picked that bark, which also kind of brings me to the bark that I've selected for our video here. You might notice this one, when I went out to the bark pile, I just did what I just told you. This one turned me on, so to speak. It's not near good quality carving bark because it's got a lot of flaky junk on it here. But I like the shape, and this is what got me right here. See these hanging off pieces of bark right here? I see, I'm going to do a mountain man here, of course, and I see that his coonskin hat could fit right in here, and that this could be some of his hair or his beard flowing off, and this jutting piece on this side of the crack, I could put a hand with him holding the end of a musket or a rifle or anything that I choose there. So this particular bark had character that personally turned me on. And so when you students go to your bark pile, you'll just have to personally find one that turns you on. And that's exactly how you select your piece of bark. Now, when I get ready to carve into this bark, as I'm cleaning it off, this bark may be rotten, may have total bug holes or something in it. It may be no good. I may have to chunk it. But this is part of what I'm telling you. Not only are you letting your artistic juices flow to read the bark, but you also have to actually begin to dig into the bark and read the bark. So when we come back on our next segment here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a piece of paper, I'm going to draw to you so you can see the images that I'm seeing in my mind's eye. And I'm also going to show you a couple of gouges here that I'm going to be able to use. Just before we go to carving into this, I did want to point out this particular piece of bark over here to the side. And this is one that I've been working on off and on. You guys probably have stuff in your studios there at home that collects a lot of dust. Well, I started on this probably 6 months ago, and every now and then I'll just stumble onto it and carve something else in it. But notice at the top, the theme here is going to be an Indian village, and at the top I've started in an eagle's head of his beak got broke off earlier, and I've not got it glued back on there yet. But there's an eagle over watching them, so to speak. You might notice over on the right-hand side I'm roughing in an owl on one segment of it. And you might notice that on the upper left-hand side, I'm going to step around here. Okay, on this upper left-hand side here, I've got a deer which is connected to the indents through their food and also through their clothing. I have the chief of the tribe down here. And this will eventually be an Indian maiden, which is to be his wife or whatever, so I'm connecting them. This will eventually be more children, and I haven't really decided here yet, which sometimes, you know, that's why these pieces take a while, because you're just thinking of this as it goes. I'm going to have another brave in the tribe down here. As we go on down here, you might notice that I've got, this is going to be a bear right here. And of course this is a buffalo in the center, which has to do with the Indians' way of life. And also there's a wolf over here, or a camp dog. And down below there's actually another piece that's blank, and let's say right up in here is still blank. So those are areas that I still have potential, you know, to do things. And what I could do is maybe a horse head, or I could do a teepee scene or something of their way of life to tie in this composition in this piece of bark. Now, when I first found this piece of bark, it was still stuck all together. But you guys might notice that I've got Bondo body putty smeared on the back of this to adhere it better, because the segments were stuck together, but as I was carving on it, I noticed that they were loose and they could break apart. But this was such a unique find when I was out in the timber that I was so excited that I had to get it out and keep it in one piece, because eventually this is going to be just the most unique piece of cottonwood bark. So when we get back together, students, I'm going to do a little drawing, show you how to transfer over, and we're going to get our flat gouges to clean off this bark and actually begin to read into it, and we'll go right on into our mountain man subject. Now, just to be prepared, students, for to read this bark out, I've got a couple of big flat gouges here. One of them's probably 1.5 inches wide, and it's about a number 5 sweep, and the other one's probably 1.25 inches wide or something like that. Pardon me. With these two gouges, you don't need this big of gouges. You could clean off your bark with about everything, but these are old gouges, and I don't care if it hurts the edges of them or whatever, because with this cottonwood bark, you'll find out that the outside crust of it is hard, and it's got dirt and dust in it, and it'll actually have a dulling tool effect on your tools. So I kind of use a couple old gouges to clean off the bark with. But I will be using them to kind of rough in as we start in on this first little bit on the bark. Now, I've got a couple other gouges in my hand. One of them is a large U gouge. It's a number 9 and 9 sweep, and it's probably 1.25 inches or so wide. And I've got a V tool here, which is pretty darn big V. Most of you probably don't have a V this big, but for roughing in, I really like a big V. But you don't have to have these exact same tools. We are just going to read into our bark now. Let me set these down. And students, I'll tell you my first thoughts with this piece of bark when I picked it up out of the bark pile was, there's a bad crack right here. See my gouge? Look how far that goes down in there. Well, my idea, when my initial mind's eye and my creativity began to flow on this piece, I saw the top of this coonskin hat coming right across here, which I know from experience being a professional carver that this crack could end up costing me or causing me trauma or problems along the way. But I like the character of this piece of bark so well that if it does, I'm going to incorporate that crack into the bark, and I'm actually going to show you guys how to fill it with a secret little filling agent that I've came up with myself, a mixture. But first of all, like I said, if this bark doesn't read out, we may end up chunking it. So your first step would be to see, and I may be right in the way, I'm not sure, but I've just got to begin to clean the bark off here is all I'm going to do on the outside. Alright, right off the bat here, you can see this crack is beginning to continue down. And I had his beard pictured in this area here, see, when I first began to look at this piece. Alright, I'm getting out of one crack there. That makes me a little happier. But this one is continually getting worse, and it's coming into my piece, which may affect the actual idea. Well, students, I hate to face defeat here on Woodcarvers Corner, but this is reality with cottonwood bark. I cleaned off into this piece, the crack got bad, the bark got rotten in there, and so I've decided to treat my stove to a nice, tasty new piece of firewood. Plan B is now an option. The reason I'm showing you this on this tape, students, is this is reality with carving cottonwood bark or driftwood. It's the same way. If the wood's no good, you just as well throw it away, cut your losses, and go on, which is what we're learning here in Woodcarvers Corner today. That's the reason why David and I decided to leave that on the tape, because not, as you know with life, not everything goes like you would like it to go. So we're going to begin to clean this piece off, which was my second choice in the bark pile, by the way. I'm going to begin to clean it off when we get back together after I get it cleaned off and read out, because I don't want to burn up a lot of our instructional video here. I'll have this cleaned off. We'll draw it over onto our drawing board, what we're going to do. And well, we've got our piece of bark cleaned off here. This is my second pick, as you saw earlier. It looks good. This one's no cracks. It's got a little trauma down in here, but I don't think that's going to cause me any problems. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to kind of quickly run through. Let's say this is my bark area that I have. I had a crack. See this crack here above the paper, and it was down a ways like this coming across. So I'm going to use that as the top of my mountain man's hat, and I'm going to work that coonskin cap in this area, or varmint hat, so to speak. This is preliminary roughing in, students, so there ain't no sense in taking a lot of time on your drawing. But now this is going to be along the top of his coonskin hat, and what I'm going to do is come down a ways. Give yourself some forehead room on your pattern in between. This is the eye line coming through his eyes, and I'm going to begin to pull a little bit of temple coming in, some high cheekbone area. This is kind of quickly what I got in mind. I'm going to begin to draw in the shank of the nose and then the wings of the nostrils in, map those in. I'm going to give him a mouth barrel line down and around his mustache, which eventually I can work that mustache in any way I want it. I like that. These will eventually end up being the eye socket areas here and here. This is just a preliminary mapping in, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time in there. Of course, his lower lip will be in underneath here. We'll have him some eyebrows here and here. And we may keep this hat down on his head a little further than my drawing. We'll have some room on the edge of the bark here for some hair. We will come down and give him a shorter cropped beard. And eventually on my bark down there, I think I'm going to have enough room to show you all a bear claw necklace, so to speak. So, you know, we're going to, this old mountain man, he's been up in the mountains and he's proud of this bear that he shot. So eventually we're going to frame in a bear claw necklace down here lower on. So you can see I've kind of drawn that on here. And I'm getting ready to start in doing some cutting, but I did want to Now let's say this is from the profile view. Let's say this is the side of the bark. Well, one of my first areas right here is I'm going to go very deeply in. Let's say this is that crack. See this crack? And I'm going to start in above my, guess I don't need that cap now that it wants to be, fell off there. I'm going to start getting some depth. This will eventually be where my coonskin, you know, set in this varmint hat. The edge of the hat, I'm going to work it back a ways, but from the side I'll begin to drop it down like this. His forehead will eventually come out from underneath here much like this. We're going to gain this height for the nose as time goes on. We're going to get a little area for his mustache happening. And of course the wing of the nose thing from the side. This is actually where his eye socket's going to set in there with eventually his eye in that area. Maybe this will be a cheekbone from the side, so he'll have some character. This over the wing of the nostril can be the mouth barrel coming down, around, and back, which will hook in with the mustache. Then the end of his beard and all will come in underneath of it, much like that. We'll get his cheek going. So this is to show you that we're going to take out this wood as excess in here, this wood is excess all in through here, and under his beard we're going to end up eventually with a bear's claw necklace that I'm talking about here, and his, of course, his chest and all. So a lot of this, what I'm even doing this side profile drawing, is to show you guys that I'm going to take this out, and this out as I first begin to start into my bark. So I'm going to take a large V first. If you don't have one this big, just simply take the largest V that you have. And now I know I drew that coonskin's nose in, and I am going to allow for it, but I'm kind of nibbing it off because as you more advanced students know, you can always you always want to draw stuff bigger than it needs to be. So this is actually going to be his hat up here, right? So we've got to push this forehead back and underneath of there to ever get the depth that we need for his nose and stuff. So this is one of my first things that I will begin to do, is to pull some of that back. You notice I'm just using the side of that big V tool as a gouge, see? I could switch over to a gouge, but I have some more V tooling here that I am going to do to get set up. So, for now, don't go very deep in there. I'm going to, on this is a big piece of bark that I have, students. You'll probably never ever, any of you out there watching this video, find a piece of bark this big, because I've been carving bark for probably 10, 12 years now or more, and this is one of the biggest pieces that I've ever picked up, and I have several of them, but I'm kind of hanging on to them for myself. Now you might notice there's a little trauma beginning to happen in through here that's going to maybe concern me in a little bit, but I don't think it looks that bad. Now I'm going to go to flat gouge, and I'm going to begin to get some of this profile here. Now eventually we'll allow for these ears on this varmint to stand up, and you might allow a little bit now, but chances are we're way too premature to worry about that, because if this is going to be the varmint's nose out here, we're going to have quite a slant here. So I think those ears, or if we leave ears for him, which we probably will be on back here a little ways, which will give us good depth. And I'm using a number 5 right now, a big one, and I'm beginning to shape over his hat right here. And as I'm doing that, of course, I'm going to go back to that in just a little bit too, but I'm getting more concerned with this little glitch that's happening. I don't know what those are. I've seen them in bark so many times. It's like a bad layer. Ooh, it's getting worse. We can't suffer defeat twice in 2-hour tape, so let's hope this gets better It's looking better. Looking better. Second close call here on Woodcarvers Corner as far as our wood giving us a rough time, which really is good for you students there at home to see. Because if you have that kind of troubles, you know, it happens with this bark, and you've got to learn to just keep after it until you get a decent piece, which I have carved as many as 3 or 4 right in a row and got bad ones, and believe me, it's very discouraging, but yet we have to keep going for what we're after. All right, eventually this is where his face is going to be, and from the side, I'm going to turn him hopefully where you can see on camera. I'll try to get right about here, let's say. Right there. I'm getting some slope here, and we're beginning to round over here. All right, I'm going to bring this drawing back into view for just a second. All right, see, I'm getting this depth up above, and I'm starting to get this slope, is what I just pointed out. Here and here. Okay, I have plenty of room on down here at the bottom a little more. I have plenty of room to get his face up in here. There's no doubt to me. And so, see where I want to come in under this beard here a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and stay away longer than I think I need and bring that in underneath that beard area a little. This will help me begin to read what I have left. What area. Now you might notice down here as I'm doing this, I'm going to leave this higher underneath here because I'm going to use this for that bear claw necklace that I'm talking about pretty soon. So as you're cleaning off kind of under the beard, don't just flatten that chest off too flat because we want to save some potential for that necklace. Alright, folks, I'm going to come up this side and up this side just slightly. And what I'm doing is beginning to get a ridge for his nose started. I'm kind of flattening off where I'm going to draw his eyes in through here. I'm going to take this pencil, or magic marker should I say, and I'm having a little vise difficulty here. Vices are so nice. Okay, now I'm going to come back and remap. I'm going to raise up the eye brow area from where I once had it. I'm going to remap a nose. In other words, since you don't have any set criteria to go by and we're just mapping into actually nothingness here, you know, there's nothing there to go by, I draw everything way big. You know, like if this is his eye socket area, I'm going to draw it out there pretty darn big. Same way with this eye socket here. Let's draw it out there pretty big. Here's along the temples. Here's the high cheekbone. Here's along the temples. Along the high cheekbone. I may pull in here as time goes along a little bit, which will allow for hair here and here. See, I'm saving enough room. I'm utilizing the full width of the bark, students, all the way to the outside. But I'm saving just enough here to where I can drop off some hair eventually for him. Long shaggy hair, which I think that most mountain men that were up in the mountains and chasing beavers and shooting animals and trapping and stuff probably didn't get to the barber shop a lot and probably didn't take a lot of good personal cleaning up with themselves. So I'm just going to leave a lot of hair and a lot of mustache and all. Here's the bottom of my mustache. Here's the bottom of my lip in there. So I'm continually not only wiping out the pattern and shaping, but I'm continually going back and drawing it in. So when we get back together on this next segment, I'm going to bring Smiley in for just an instant, which for those of you who have taken my seminars know him, he's a skeleton head. And we're going to study some bone and some benchmarks, so to speak, to frame this face in. So you students see how far you get along, and we'll get right back to Now the only thing that I've done on since that you saw this last was I pulled the forehead back a little bit more. You might notice I got a little deeper, and I cleaned this up, and I took a round gouge and gently soften through where this varmint, you can kind of see where his face is going to be, and I've kind of left some areas for these ears that would develop on this coonskin cap for him in just a little bit. But the main focus of this video is on this face. And so here's Smiley for you students who have never met Smiley before. He's just a deadbeat that hangs out with me when I do these seminars. And he's not a lot of company either, I might say. But see right in through here where the bridge of the nose pulls in there? Well, on my carving, when I don't know where else to kind of start, I know that most of his head is up and underneath that coonskin hat, and I do want enough here to show some eyebrows, much like I told you earlier in the film that we might do a little bit of this same type of a situation. So this is kind of what we're after here. But right in through here is the first place. Leave you some room for your forehead for eyebrows and for a little bit of character. You know, see some wrinkles up underneath there and his eyebrows. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start, and this is about a 5/8 number 9 or something. It's just a U-gouge, let's say, you know, whatever size you got, because you're going to be working on, obviously on a different size of piece of bark than I will. And you don't even have to use these techniques that we're using right here in a piece of bark. You could be using this technique in a half log, which I've carved hundreds of faces in a half log before. You could be using it in driftwood and maybe using the roots for hair or something flowing out. But where I drew my eye sockets through, that's going to be my first step right there. Okay, my second step is I'm going to go to a little wider open. In other words, the other one had quite a deep U-gouge to it. This one is less. It's shallower. And what I'm going to do, you notice I got a black line drawn down through here, which is a preliminary center line for me. And I've got this gouge upside down right in the middle of his nose, and I'm coming right down the shank of his nose. Now, we're wanting, of course, the end of his nose to be a peak, right? I'm noticing some trauma here right where I uncovered it in his nose. I hope that doesn't cause us problems here, but we'll see how it goes. But I'm going to lean in just a second. Hopefully you can see this angle on the nose right here. So I'm going to start pushing this angle back, which bottoms out approximately the center through my eyes. Kind of to recap, I've run across right here. Now on Smiley he doesn't have a nose, but I'm coming down the bridge of the nose, which ends up approximately the center of the eye. So you see where I came here, approximately the center of the eyes. Now I'm going to take this same U-gouge and turn it over and begin to pull some of this excess off the side and this excess off this side. Which the object here, students, is to, of course, leave a nose ridge, a shank for the nose out here. And that's beginning to happen. But I want it to get a little longer, so I'm going to reach down here and nib it further. Because, see, I have a lot of length to do a good, strong face on this guy. And I'm saying, well, I just as well lengthen his nose, which will give him a much stronger face, I know from experience. And as I'm coming into this eye socket area, look here, as I'm coming up the shank of the nose, how I'm just turning this U-gouge right back out and beginning to clean some depth. Eventually these will become his eye sockets and the mounds. But for now we're after the height. You have to gain depth to get height, if that makes any sense. In other words, I'm lowering down his eye sockets in the surrounding face to where we can have this height on the nose. So that's one of the steps right there. You can see I'm beginning to get a shank. I'm cleaning it up. Looks fairly decent, that shank there. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my V tool here and stay. Now, just because I got this mapped in as the end of the nose, students, always leave yourself room. So see, I'm going to come down here below where I know the end of his nose is going to go and begin to set the end of his nose in and under. depending on the size of the carving you're doing, but I would say you could afford a good 3/8 to a 1/2 inch depth here under the nose. Now keep in mind he's going to have a mustache right here. See, this will eventually be the mustache, so don't get too deep or you'll have to, he's going to have a big old long hunker time it's all said and done, which gives good character. But alright, notice how I'm tipping here slightly up towards his nose. And here, slightly towards his nose. This will eventually be where I land the wings of his nostrils. But just before we go any further on that nose thing, let's begin to find the perimeters or the shape of his face. And I'm going to bring Smiley back into view here. And what we're going to do is show you that he pulls in the temple area here. See this high zygomatic arch on this skull right here? The temple slants in to these two bones. You can reach up and feel those on yourself. So I'm going to take this number 5 and I'm going to go here. Then I'm going to flip it over the high cheekbone area to establish that. Always work at an outwards angle, students, like this. See how I've got this towards the outside and over here towards the outside? Because in my seminars I see many students go straight in, and they'll get the face so narrow and cut off the potential of the face. So here's what I'm saying. I'm going to clip the temple. Now keep in mind you're going to have hair back here pretty soon. So don't go all the way to his hat right now. On the other side, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to pull that temple in, which begins to puff out his high cheekbone, see? Alright, I'm going to take this number 5 over this high cheekbone right there. At an outwards angle for now. Same way here. At an outwards angle for now. And under that high cheekbone, I'm going to tip this 5 inwards again. And pull just a little accentuation into that cheekbone. And just a little under this cheekbone. Now I'm not going all the way back. Keep in mind that this is eventually going to be hair coming out from behind there, so you will need to save it. I am going to round this forehead slightly bit, like that. Now, I think I'm ready to explain the width of this nose. Notice I'm pulling off this heavy stuff off the skeletal mask area and the cheeks and all. We're getting ready to set the wings of the nose. And for that, I've got, you could use various things. I've got about a 1/2 inch number 7, or here's the next size bigger number 7. And I find when you're mapping these wings right here, students, keep them wide, because you can always take more off. Keep them bigger than you think they need to be. In other words, I'm just guessing that this mountain man's nose is actually going to be about that wide, maybe even narrower, but you're always better to keep it narrow. Now, keep your center line going down the center for now. Once you've mapped approximately where the wings go, I'm going with that bigger one I showed you, just to be safe, because that's what I'm here teaching you, is always stay big. And look, I'm going towards the outside. I'm not going straight in. If I went here, and I know my hand's right in the way of the camera, but if I went straight in and I didn't like it, then I wouldn't have any recourse. But by going here at an outwards angle and in, I always have the chance to come back and reclip these. So that's very important to you students, beginner students especially, is always leave plenty of potential on the wings of the nostril while doing this. Because during the many years of me teaching seminars, believe me, I've had students just go right in right off the bat when I show this maneuver and just kill off any potential to ever have a longer nose or wider nostrils. And once you do that, it's very hard to overcome. So I caution you there at home who's following along with me on the tape. All right, now I went to this next smaller number 7 now that I've winged those nostrils a little. And I'm going to come right over, I got it upside down, I'm on my center line, and I'm going to come right over the end of this nose, And sorry my arm's in the way there, but you'll have to bear with me, students. Is at a downwards angle. See, I'm at a downwards angle here. Don't go up and underneath that nose, because if you do, you're going to kill off more potential. Okay, I'm going to go to a V tool again, a smaller one this time, and I'm going to clean this at an angle back towards where I'd set the wing. See here what I'm doing? At an angle up, and at an angle up, like that. Now I'm going to clean that center line and that red dot off the end of the nose, because I think it's confusing for you students there at home who's watching this. And I'm going to greater the angle on the nose while I have a chance. In other words, I'm cleaning my nose up and shaping it, mapping it in for the last time here the way I like it. I am going to get a little deeper as I come into the eye socket areas here. And just simply by turning this gouge up on side, I'm going to get a little deeper coming into the eye socket area. Okay, now I can take this number 7 and pull just this crud that's happening on the outsides of the wings and the nostrils here. Alright, see, I'm going to pull just a little of that off, like that. I'm going to be ready at this point for a couple of things. We'll get our card back into view here. Alright, so we've got some angle here. I've left plenty of puff on the forehead for right now. But remember when I drew, now we done this just now. We set the shape of his face with that number 5. We set the shape of this face with the number 5. And of course his hat is actually down a little further on his forehead like this in our carving, right? But here's where I'm going to next, students. I'm going to begin to rough in these eye orbitals, like this. And see the mouth barrel line that originates at the top of the nostril? I'm going to begin to bring it out and around next. Out and around. So let's go search out some eye socket stuff. And let's also search out these mouth barrel lines. I'm going to start at the top of the nostril wing, come down and out and around, and this will eventually be his mustache right there where I just drew. See, I'm sorry that my magic marker doesn't seem to show up. Let me try the black one here. We'll kind of switch colors on you. But I believe this black one is showing up better for you. Now don't go all the way up the nose like I just did. Let's leave some room, which is what we're teaching on the tape. Leave plenty of room in preliminary mapping in. Now by me dropping back with this mouth barrel thing, see, not only am I going to come off here and be interested in my front view, and of course I've got them drawn a little lopsided. I'm setting to the side so it's hard for me to do this. But now here's where I'm wanting you. From the side view, this line will come back some. This is off the nose. Here's the end of the nose, right? That we just shaped in. We've got a good angle going into the brow. We've got that started to establish. Now we're coming off this wing and back a little, and we're going to start setting up this particular mustache area. Okay, here's what we're going to do. Take your medium-sized V tool, which this is probably a 5/16, a quarter, somewhere in there, V. And I'm going to start right here, students, at the wing of the nostril. I'm going to come around. See, that's actually forming the nostril itself, the wing. I'll do it on this side. Hopefully you can, well, I guess let me turn this just a little. Maybe you guys can see better. I'll try to keep my hands out of the way. It's tough to do when you're right-handed and you're carving on the right-hand side. But, alright, now I'm bearing into the face. Remember on my drawing where I just done that? And I'm going to pull the bottom of the mustache down and around for now. Now this is just preliminarily mapping this in. But notice how I'm coming back with the edge of my V and planing down the top of this mustache, right? Good deal. The other side, quickly. I'm sorry I'm wiggling around here, but my vise is giving me a little bit of trouble, guys. You wood carvers who carve at home know how technical difficulties happen with vices and holding your work and everything. Well, this guy here, this vise is so old it gives me trouble from time to time. It doesn't want to let go. Alright, I'm planing down the mustache some. And I'm getting some depth, right? Let me straighten this up here just a little better for you. See if we can get that centered up on there. And the eye sockets. Now, I'll bring Smiley up here for a second. I'm not going to spend much time with him, but I do want to point out a couple deals. Remember this bone point right there. Reach up and feel that on yourselves, students, where that's your forehead squares around kind of right up above your eyes. All right, I'm going to make a bone point right here and right here. All right, notice how wide he is down here. Here's his eye sockets, right? Look where the cartilage breaks away from. Reach up and feel where your glasses would sit if you wear glasses. All right, that's right in there. And here's those high cheekbones. See, here's our higher cheekbone, and it's setting right out here, right? And right out here. Here's the high cheekbones that I'm talking about. Well, look where the orbitals set between this top bridge that I've got drawn right here and your center line where the cartilage breaks away from the nose. That's where your eyes basically set. And they come all the way almost out to under that bone where I'm talking. So to figure where to start drawing your eye sockets in, that's some, I know that's kind of vague criteria to go by, but yet for just roughing in on a piece of bark like we're doing, it'll get you what we're after, the placement of the eye sockets. And there, I've got them drawn in there. And so I'm going to start searching for some depth in right there right now. And if this V is too big, for instance, you guys will be carving on a smaller one probably. And if so, go to your smaller V, begin to pull this inside corner of the eye socket out. I may even have to go to my smaller V, we'll see here. Here and here will be your first eye socket cuts. Now, when you cut across these tops, students, don't get in very deep. Stay very shallow up here for now. We can always take that in deeper. And I'll show you on our drawing in just a second why. But stay shallow on your top line. And keep in mind that we're after an orbital with some roundness like this from side to side. So now on the bottom, I can get a little deeper with this socket set up. And of course you'll see there's kind of a bench forming underneath on this cheek here. Well, we'll plane that off as we begin to round these orbitals up. Now this is along the edge of the visor. You can reach right up along the side of your eye and feel that bone right there where my V-tool is cutting. Right there. I'm trying to keep my hands out of the way where y'all can see what's happening. And now I'm taking the edge of my V and beginning to round up the orbitals. Some. Mounding them up a little. And I'm getting continually deeper on the bottom as I mound them up than I am on the top. I'm going to come over here, hoping my head isn't in the way. If y'all hear me make odd noises, it's because my cameraman kicks me in the back whenever my head gets over in front of the camera, so just joking here. Don't worry though, I'm not going to quit my day job to become a comedian, I don't think. So let's mound this up, folks. See, I'm tipping my V, and you could switch tools and go to a little flat gouge and do this and do that, but I've found in production work of carving over the years, I'm better off just to keep carving with what's in my hand at the time. You'd be surprised how much time you can spend goofing around looking for tools when you could already just had it done, you know. So now you will have to spend some time. Now look what's happening. I'm getting some roundness here. Roundness here. And I realize this one's going to have to be worked a little. I am going to bring the drawing right back in for just a second and show you what I'm after with that. And that's up here. I'm setting this socket up, and from the side, students, from the side, I want this to be higher in the socket and lower at the bottom. In other words, a slight bit of slant right in there. So we're after that, and of course the front view like I've got drawn here. This is what I've got. I'm going to give you one other deal right here, area where you guys can begin to start taking some depth down, and that's under this mustache. We can begin to start mapping or framing a little bit. Don't get too close to the bottom of his nose with it, because then you won't have any recourse if you've got it too short. So I always rough in long. See how long I'm leaving this, where my finger's at there? And begin to sweep up and around and work inwards. So, and I'm going to work these benches off here. I'm going to work this under just a little, begin to shape his mustache just a little bit. I'm going to take my V-tool and clean up along the edges of his hair, and when I come back on screen, I'm going to go ahead and give you guys this eye sequence and probably talk about the lip. So we'll get back together and do that. Okay, students, I've cleaned up a little bit around what I just demonstrated, and I spent a little time jockeying from one eye to the other, trying to even up. I've tried cleaning up around my mouth barrel, my nose, and I've kind of cleaned the skeletal mask back and got a little slope dropping into there. Now, where I'm going to go to from here is I want some heavy bushy eyebrows on him. So I'm eventually gonna begin to leave some height right here and here for those bushy eyebrows. The other thing that I'm going to begin to map in is I do want to leave him a lower lip coming out from underneath that mustache in just a little bit. And I'm also going to start getting some nostrils in here and some nostrils in here and get some shadowing. So these are the steps that we're going to go after next. In my drawing, here's where we're going. We're going with the eyebrows to get that set up, and eventually I'm going to, start swinging some hair in on those eyebrows in the same way over here. I'll get into that a little more as time goes along. And we're also going to work this area and maybe start shaping this mustache right now in here. So that's some of the areas, and of course those nostrils. Let's start with the nostrils, since I just said that. I've got another little number 7. This one's just less than a ½ inch, probably more like a 3/8 wide, number 7. And I've also got my carving knife. And we're just kind of, you might say, going to pick the boogers in his nose. I'm going to come in here from the side, not from the front. You'll get a nice roll. Now, for you beginner students that have never carved in this bark before, roll in here very gently and don't push. Don't fight that, because when you're rolling in like this right here to get that curve from the side, you'll break that nostril right off there and it'll pop off. So be very careful when you're running that tool from the side. Now I'm going to come to my knife and come right back in where I just run that, pardon. Thought my cameraman was going to kick me in the back when my head got in front there, guys. Okay, we're getting a little depth here. I know my hand's in the way here. I'm going to roll this. We're actually going to pick that booger out of that nose right there. So we're getting some depth, and I'm also got a little bit of that magic marker on there, which kind of showing odd on the camera, so I am going to pull that off with my knife like that. Just to get rid of that, for more for you guys' sake there that's viewing, you students at home. Okay, I got some depth. Pull the boogers out of his nose. Now I'm going to go for some shadowing along the mouth barrel. I'm going to come right down here with my knife and along the top of the mustache. Notice how I'm tilted in towards his face. Look here, I'm going to get a little angled the other way now and just pick a chip out of here. Now, you can probably begin to see the difference between where it's done on the right side here and where it's not done on the left, right? Look at the shadowing. Look how weak this side is. I'm going to come over here. Get your knife, angle it in gently. I'm not getting in very deep now, students, you know, less than a 1/16 of an inch, actually. All we're doing is playing with light and shadowing here. And notice how that begins to bring that nose out and set that face very nicely along there for now. We will come back to this in a little bit. We're beginning to add some shadowing. All right. The lip area, I'm going to go ahead and kind of split his mustache in the center. Now, for you beginner students who's watching this tape, if you're carving along, keep you a center line back in there. Matter of fact, as soon as I make this cut up and underneath that mustache, I'm going to draw this center line back in. Now, we are going to put that lip under there, but notice I'm pulling some of this excess off here because his lip was way too far out. See, his cheeks are way back here, and I had what big old mound. Matter of fact, I could afford a bunch more out of here. But what my goal is to begin to capture the same shadow underneath of this mustache as we had. Okay. For cleaning up, I still notice how long my mustache is, so I can always trim it shorter, right, if I need to. No problem. Now, remember I had his lip marked in there just before I just carved it off? Well, I'm going to come across with a U-gouge. This is a 3/8 number 9, which is a little smaller of a U-gouge than what I had earlier. And I'm going to come in under this mustache and begin to leave this lip thing happening. You can see that at the top of this tool. See that lip line? And there again, we're going to salt and pepper his lip to taste later on as we work this mustache, so to speak. But for now, that's a preliminary mapping in of the lip. Okay, let's go up to where I had drawn the eyebrows. Now, there's two methods that you could get to. This would be more of an advanced method where I take a flat gouge and just touch it here and here. For beginners, I probably would recommend a V-tool. But a lot of times, see how I just touched that, and I've already got two big old height areas left. But now, for you beginners, you might be better off to take your V and tip it down and come across like this and like this, out like that. Okay, and I am taking the middle of his forehead down and back a little. Matter of fact, I'm going to pop this drawing back into view for you just a second here, and I'm going to show you where I'm talking about. We're leaving our height right here for these eyebrows, which they'll be in this area, this fuzzy eyebrows. But I'm going to tilt the forehead on back just a little more and under that hat for that final shadowing that we're after, students. And I'm going to work that with my knife. Just like remember here how I was just doing these depths with my knife? I'm going to come along at an upwards angle under that hat. Now this is, sorry about my head in the way, it's hard to carve way over that far. Now this is up and under his hat, and this is a running stop cut, and if you slide off, you will cut yourself. So be very careful when you're holding your knife like I am. This is a dagger cut. See how I've got to hold that knife? And if that knife slides through the wood, man, it'll slide off and slice your leg or something. And every time I do that, I always want to be very careful that I've got control of that knife, and if it slides through that bark and out of the wood, that I'm not going to hurt myself. Alright, so I've got my relief cut at an angle with my knife, up and under, up and under. I'm going to come right back against it, and this is a lesson in shadowing, just like, now here again, be very careful. I always make a joke in my seminars to keep all your important body parts out of the way, which y'all can't see, but it's not very far down to my important body parts from where I'm carving right here. So I'm not only joking, but I'm also very serious in the same manner, you know. And I'm pulling this up and under his hat and cleaning. Look at that depth line happening. Man, this guy is popping out of this piece of bark, isn't he? And that's what shadowing is about, students. I've got to turn him a little to get comfortable with what I'm doing. Shadowing, when you begin to realize that depth adds strength. And I've taken some seminars, not in wood carving, but in drawing and in clay work, where they explain how important that shadowing and depth is. And for you beginner students who are just into wood carving, you're getting a treat, I think, or let's say an advancement in what you know about wood carving by seeing this shadow develop right here on your video. This is good information that you're getting. Okay, I've shadowed under the hat, and eventually this will be kind of jagged along here because it's fur, right? And I will work that. But now I'm going to, while we're shadowing things and we're strengthening stuff up, look here, I'm going to take my knife and come along the hair at an angle. I'm more into the hair, I'm not into his face, but I'm cutting towards his face. I'm even going to move my leg out from under there just in case of that slip we just talked about earlier, if it did happen. And I do caution, be very careful, because this bark is soft and you could slide and cut yourself. And I know I hate to keep mentioning it or cautioning it. I ain't asking for anybody to cut themselves, but I have on this bark so many times had that knife just go zip, you know, right through there, and boy, it'll be there before you know it. So be careful, students. Okay. Some reason it seems like to me when you're using a gouge, it's a whole lot safer than when you got a knife. Something about that knife seems real dangerous to me, but it's a very useful tool. I'm going to go to the other side here. I was just trying to get where y'all could see what I was doing. I'm against the face line. I'm giving what I would call distinct separation between what is his face and what is his hair. Students, as I'm cleaning this up, also notice that I've not went in a perfect straight line. You notice how I keep this line, and my hand's in the way, I'm sorry about that. But notice that I'm meandering the line. See how it's curving around? Because straight lines are very boring and they will catch your eye and just stick out like a sore thumb. So always keep a line when you're doing something like this, moving, meandering, curving. Oh man, look at him. He's getting stronger, isn't he? He's coming right on out of this piece of wood. So I tell you what I'm going to do here. I'm going to give you guys a few areas to be setting in some hair and basing in these eyebrows, and then I'm going to give you that as kind of some homework to do, and then we're going to get together and see, because we need to base this mustache and some of this hair. We need to get it started to fit with what's going on. And then we're going to get together and do these eyes in just a second. So what I'm going to do, students, I've got a 1/4 inch number 9 gouge here. It's a U-gouge, a little more of a curve. And I'm going to come in and begin to swing in some hair basing in. I'm not putting in the final hair. I'll come back and refine all of this later. But I'm going to reach down through here about 5 or 6 places. You might notice I've got a pretty uniform line coming around on the bottom of his beard. Well, right off the bat, I want to lose some of that straight line because I just told you that straight lines were not good. So look what I'm going to do. I'm going to reach in here and just, chew up that line a little bit at random. There's no rhyme or reason to where I'm cutting. I'm just laying in some base. Now I'm going to take this 1/4 inch number 9 and begin to run up towards his lip. A little heavier with, let's say, that one. Let's say maybe a little heavier here. Maybe heavier over here. Jump around when you're doing hair, students. Keep roving, cleaning, and moving. Okay, I'm trying to keep my head out of the way, but this is way over on the other side of the carving for me, so I'm basing in some heavier ones. On his mustache, I'm going to come in here and begin to lay base. You notice I'm jumping around? Keep jumping around when you're doing what I'm doing, basing in, because if you start on one side of that mustache and just go right across it, you will end up getting repetitious lines. They'll be straight and boring. So by jumping around when you're first basing in hair, this gives you a look that's not repetitious. Alright, so see, I'm beginning to base in. I'm going to lose some of this straight line along his mustache here. I know my hand's in the way. Here. Lose some of that straight line and begin to get a little more jagged look. I don't like the looks of that hanging up there. This looking pretty bulky to me out in this area on this beard. When you start basing in hair, there's no rules. And so you'll just have to begin to salt and pepper it to taste. Okay, so you students there at home, why don't you do some digging and cleaning and getting cleaned up and everything. Start basing in some hair. I'm also going to begin to lay base here along this hair with this U-gouge and over on the other side a little bit. And as soon as we come back on here, I'll show you what I've based in as far as getting ready on my eyebrows too. See, I'm going to come in and swing in some with a smaller U-gouge even than this one I got. Base in a few. And I'm going to work this mustache and my beard with a U-gouge and the eyebrows. And then we're going to get together and carve these eyes in just a second. So you students get... We're roughing in here. Got a U-gouge. Keep it moving. Jump around. Jump around a lot now, students. Don't let yourself get hung. Okay, I've got my V-tool now in my hand, and I'm coming in and beginning to spice up here and there with some little V-tooling cuts to where I had once had my U-gouge. Well, now I'm giving it a few V-toolings. I'm also giving it a few V-toolings down in here. Now we will come in and doctor this up a little more as time goes along, but for now we've kind of got the beard based in. You might notice that I've came in and began to gain a little shadowing kind of up and under the beard. Not a lot, but what I've done is I kind of took the edge of a flat gouge like this and I just kind of roughed it. I'm going to tip this where you guys can see a little more. I'm not going under here too deep now because his neck's backing under there ways, but eventually we're going to have a bear claw necklace to do in here. Now there's a couple areas I'm going to start searching out along the side of this hair. Now I'm lucky here because there's kind of a piece of bark hanging out, and that's going to be a good place for me to kill off his hair, so to speak. See that piece of bark that's kind of hanging out there? So I'm just going to simply funnel your eye into that by tipping this hair out away. See how I'm doing that? And that's going to funnel your eye in, but this is going to leave this raised, and I'm going to put some, like I have been here on the beard, I'm going to work some more hair there. And there's no end on this side. I'm going to bring it just a little more. See, his hair doesn't end up. It just goes into the bark. So I might take the edge of this tool I got and just simply begin to create a place. This will be the end of his hair. The angle that the camera is, you can't see the same thing that I've gotten, but I am going to utilize this piece of bark as the hair on this side eventually. Now students, let's go up. We've got our eye sockets kind of doctored up, so to speak, and ready. Let's talk about the shape of the eye that we're going to put in there. I'm going to bring this card back in. And in our eye sockets, we've got our orbitals in there. This is the shape that I'm interested in seeing. I'm coming out of the tear duct. I'm going to come up faster. Keep towards the top of your orbitals. Notice how I'm drawing them up more towards the top. This is going to be a crow's foot plumb off the side here in a minute. And I usually will try to keep the bottom of that eye squinted up some. I know in nature that this swags a little, but I can tell you from experience from teaching many seminars that it's not unusual to see my students, when they're carving the shape of this eye that I'm drawing, they'll swag that down too low on the bottom side. Well, you can take more wood off as time goes on, but you can't put it back. So you're better off to cut them narrow here. See, this way. Cut them narrow and not fat. And I'm eventually going to drop on out with some crow's feet out of the corner of the eyes, you know, like here and here, for character. And as we develop this eye thing, I'm also going to begin to come out of here and pick up some nice secondary character, like this and this. I'll show you where this is on the guy in just a minute, on my pattern. And this will give him some facial character. So, for the eye, I've misplaced my good pencil. Here it is. Okay. Now we could also get some dividers for you beginner students. If you don't have some dividers, you could get some. And you're supposed to have, what I usually will do is I'll draw one in like I just did, right? Notice I'm keeping it up in the top of the orbital, right? And I'm coming across. I'm trying to keep my head out of the way. Okay. And draw this one in. Now, when you draw those in, it doesn't hurt to see if they even up. And one thing I want to do for sure is between this tear duct right there and this tear duct right there, let's keep them straight across from each other, because I'll guarantee you That'll show up very badly. Now you can take some dividers and measure here. See if you got one eye width in the middle and one over here. Now the drawing books say you're supposed to have another eye's width to the outside, which would be 5 eyes wide across this widest portion. But I can tell you as an artist that we have artistic license, and over my years of experience I've always been much better off to carve bigger eyes. They're the focal point of the carving, and the public likes to see those bigger eyes. So once I've drawn them in, and yes, these are a little big, I'm going to take a small V-tool and I'm going to start out here and tip towards the pupil. I'm going to come across in the same arcing motion where I just drew, and I'll try to get out of the way where you guys can see, but I'm kind of sitting in an awkward position for this right side. Now I'm going to tip it towards the pupil here. Don't swag down very deep, downwards very far. See how I kept that kind of straight for now? Because see, I can always open it up wider if I need to. But you're always better off to start out at more of a narrow like this. Okay, so here I'm coming across this side the same way. Tipping over and into that tear duct. And I'm tipping it towards the pupil again. Now I'm going to say that I'm actually etching this line more than I'm cutting it. I realize I am cutting it in there, but for me to say that I'm cutting a heavy line, that's not happening. I'm just barely etching it. Now this would be a very good time to look at your piece head on, and I'm going to forget about the camera and I'm going to look at it head on to me. This is more head on to me. And I'm going to look from side to side to make sure that they're approximately what I want to see. This one I'm going to shape slightly. Now I'm tipping it towards the eye, and I'm using the edge of my V-tool to pull the excess off with. And this would fall under the heading that you students have taken me in classes before, my seminars. You've heard me say, salt and pepper these to taste as you jockey them back and forth. So try to get them as close to the same size, and you don't want one side buggier than the other. So spend some time, get them traced in. Now they're traced in with the V-tool. Go back to your knife. I got my knife here again. And remember our shadowing lesson? Well, now we're going to go to the inside corner right there with that. And I'm going to touch that knife right there like that. Okay, see that? Now I'm going to come right here. And I'm not really angling my knife, students. I'm kind of trying to keep it straight. Alright, once my two-way stop cut's made, I'm going to come right in here and pop the three-way out. Alright, I'll try to keep my hand out of the way here to where you can see the outside. Right there, I'm going to make a stop cut in and towards his eye. Don't get very deep either. I know my hand's in the way, sorry about that, but right here's my next cut. I'm going to reach in, and so I got the corner clipped, and I'm going to reach in here with a three-way like this, pull that piece out. Then I'm going to drag my knife along here and up along here. And I'm going to take some time and whittle this eye round. Now keep in mind that don't get it in too deep on the top. Be very, very gentle when you're pulling this little piece along the top, because you want it to be deeper at the bottom than it is at the top. And for you first-time bark carvers, if you've not had experience with this bark, be very careful, because I'll guarantee you that lid right there will just fall right off there. It'll go south on you in a hurry, so to speak. Alright, I'm coming over to this side now. I'm in the corner of the eye. Stop cut, tear duct, stop cut, three-way, pop out. Other corner, sorry, can't see it all. I guess my hand's kind of in the way. It's a tough position, but you can get the drift of what I'm doing here. I'm stop cutting the corner of that eye, and I'm going to reach in here. I could turn this just a little where you can get a little better view, folks. The longer that we shoot video and the more experience that I get in front of the camera, I become more and more conscious of that it's tough to carve and keep your hands out of the way, but I'm doing the best I can for you folks there at home. You students are... This video is so neat because when I first started carving there was just a very few books out. I started back in 1979. I quit my job in '83 and became professional at it, and I've been carving professional ever since 1983. But when I first started, I would give anything to have a video like this to explain each step of the way along. And I carved mainly with books, and of course I'm like everybody else. I would have to give the godfather of wood carving, who I think would be Harold Inlow, a lot of the credit for his books and his efforts and his teaching efforts in the earlier years. Of course, there's been others who's had really good books over the years, but I think a lot of people kind of consider Harold as the pioneer in teaching wood carving to a mass bunch of people like we are here in Woodcarvers Corner. So, okay, I've got my eyes and I'm starting to whittle them in. I'm going to go back to my V-tool now. Notice how thick the lids look. The bottom lids especially. So I'm going to tip my V-tool on its edge, and I'm just using the flat side on one side. And see, I pull that down a little closer to the contour. I'm going to do it over here too. I'm going to turn this down, pull those lids a little closer to the contour of the eye. I'm going to give a lid line. Now you beginners, on this bark, you will fall off into that bark so fast right there when I'm doing that lid line. You'll fall off in there so fast if you're not careful. I'm going to bag this bag on up a little here on the corner. I'm going to reach over here and do the same thing. Hopefully you can see better on this side, student. See, I'm bagging that bottom lid up a little more there instead of dragging it towards the outside as much. And I'm also going to put in this lid line. Here again, caution, you will fall into that eye. Be very careful. Once I got the lid lines under there, I might even come in here, throw him just a couple of character wrinkles, very lightly, very lightly. I'll doctor those later as time goes along. Same way here. Let's come over. Begin to get him some lid lines. There we go. Alright, I'm going to come on out of the corner of these. I should turn this a little better where you guys can see. I'm going to come on out of here with some crow's feet, and I should draw them. I'm going to like drop off one here. I'm going to take a couple up like this and maybe one down in here, you know. So I'm with my V-tool. We're doing some crow's feet out of the corner of the eyes. I'm sorry my hands are in the way. It's just in a bad spot for us, guys, so you'll have to bear with me again. But there, I'm getting those crow's feet. Maybe I can show you what maybe I can't. There you go. See that crow's foot? I'm going to come over to this side right here, and let's do the same deal. I'll one up, maybe one down, maybe even split that one a little. I might even drop one off right out of there. don't worry or spend a lot of time wondering where you should be making those wrinkles. For one reason, I don't think there's any rhyme or reason to where wrinkles come out of the corners of your eyes. It's nice to have a couple of them rolling up like this one I'm just getting ready to do. Notice I'm rolling it up, and I'm going to split the tail on that one. We've got some character lines. See them happening there? Alright, now just in that segment when I was drawing for you guys on there a while ago on the card, well, remember I said we're going to come out of the corner of the eye with some character here. We're going to come out of the eye with some character here. And we're going to come over here and get a little depth and maybe accentuate this high cheekbone like right there. Alright, same way here. We're going to get a little depth and a little depth to accentuate and carry some nice character on through in his face. Now, I've got a 1/4 inch number 9, and for my 2 lower marks I just made, I'm going to have to readjust where I can even reach this. You guys are getting the drift there at home now. This right side's kind of tough for me reaching across. Okay, this character line that will be eventually feathered out. I'm kind of probably setting it in a little harsher than it needs to be, but I do have room to feather it as time goes on. So there's one side. Let's come over quickly. Whoops. I'm testing David's skills to see if he can keep up with me waving that thing around in front of him here. Okay, we're getting us some good character here. And of course up and under this high cheekbone here. For the ones I got drawn out of the corner of the eyes, I'm going to my V tool. And I'm going to tip the V a little. One way here, one way here. That'll feather out. Well, come on, Vice. We're going to do this one right quick. Like that. Now, students, I'm going to spend some time roving and cleaning. I'm going to refine. I'm going to bring him across some wrinkles on his forehead. Much like I showed you this guy earlier when I brought him in to view. And see up under here he's got a couple of character wrinkles on his upper forehead. And these eyebrows are not real strong, but yes, you can see them on there. Look at these character lines on him here and here where I just applied them onto my carving. See how that gives him this secondary cheek lobe and begins to pick up some character. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to rove around and mess with a couple of little niches. For instance, I might take my knife and play in a niche or two here, maybe one on the other side. Be very careful. You know, a few niches looks good, students, but a lot is too many. So it's just, you know, you got to learn when to quit with this. Work some of that. I'm also going to get him just a hint with my knife of this upper lip thing. By picking a shadow here, see I'm beginning to show the top of that lip, right? Okay, so you students, I'm going to clean up for a little bit here on some of the stuff I just covered, and you guys go ahead and work on yours there at home. In just a second, we're going to get back together and we're going to go up here and start putting some texture on this coonskin hat. We're going to come down here at the bottom and we're going to do us a bear claw necklace, which I've never done on a video. I've done it in live seminars before, but then we're going to do some texturing and stuff. So do some catching up. We're going to get back together in just a little bit. Now I'm ready to set the pupils in on this guy's eyes, and I just wanted to point out to you guys there at home, you students, that I'm going to put that pupil in wider at the top, narrower at the bottom. In other words, I'm hiding more of it under the upper lid than I am the lower lid. That's one of the things I'm going to do. The other thing that I'm going to bring along is this face line that comes along his beard and brings out the perimeter of the face. Now, we had already put in this accentuation line and this one. Remember those just a little earlier on the tape? But the line that goes in, for instance, here, I might need to bring this. My vise is really giving me a trouble here. This line's what I'm talking about, students, that it's a definite separation between what is his cheek and what is his beard. I'll do that on both sides, of course. I'm drawing it on the other side, but you all don't have to see that right now. Okay? And take a V-tool and gently feather along that line. Now notice, I'm not doing a straight line. I'm coming here a ways, then I'm going up for a little ways, and then I'm going back again, up and under kind of that high cheekbone area there. Because I can tell you from experience, if you get in here very deep with a V-tool, you will end up with a terrible bench, or you'll get into his face too far. I've just seen that happen at seminars so many times. So now I'm working his beard up against that line with the V-tool. And this is a subtle line now. I'm not getting very heavy with that. Alright, I was going to try to get where you guys could see here, but it's going to be tough without my hand in the way. Here's the other side. I'm going to feather it. Now, I can begin to feather it, and then up and in behind there. So I'm creating a definite separation between this beard and his face. Now I may spend some time doctoring the beard and the mustache and roving around with this V-tool here. See, I'm kind of roving and putting in some extra hair here and there in the beard. And I may even get in here with my knife in this beard a couple of at random places. Let's say here. I'll turn this where you can see maybe better in just a second, but I'm pulling out a shadow. Let's do one up here where the camera can see. I'm in the way, but I'm going to pull a little shadow in there. Don't take much, see, I'm just going to capture some character. Let's come over in here and maybe do some more of it. Keep it moving, remember. Earlier when I said to always keep that hair and never get into straight lines, keep it moving. Shadow, jump over here, roll us in a shadow with your knife, deep area. Okay, those are some things I'd like to see beginning to happen on your carvings. Now, these pupils that we drew on in the card, get where you can see. I'm going to reach right in here, and I'm going to put those pupils approximately, almost follows the grain of that wood. If you guys could see the way that bark is, the grain and it's hitting the pupils, those are actually just almost following that. So I'm going to go to, I've got a little number 5, and I'm saying it's 1/4 inch wide, a little sweep to it that's going to fit that right there. Let me tip this down just a little more, and that way my hand I don't think will be in the way. There we go. Now, students at home, when you get ready to set that tool right there, do not push hard. If you do, you'll crack that pupil right in half. I've done it so many times. So you're just gently touching that. See there? Stop cut, gentle stop cut, like that. Okay. Then I'm going to take my knife and reach right in here, pull that inside piece, reach here, pull that inside piece. I'll do that on the other side, touch it here, like that. Touch it here, like that. Reach in, pull a gentle piece out. Now if something happens along the way that you break the inside pupil out of there, then you'll just simply invert the pupils. In other words, take them totally out, make two big old deep holes right there. Capture a lot of character. But I usually try to do this first. Now, up on this coonskin hat area, I'm going to begin to V-tool a little more of a detail. This is a coon. I'm not going to try to show it as a live coon or anything, but I am going to show a little character. For instance, maybe this brow line coming in with his eye up underneath there a little. Now keep in mind it's a skin, so see, I don't have to show. I might show a little dipping in the fur up in here, little jaggedness along here before it comes back up, and hollow out these ears good. See, I may take this and hollow the ears out some in there. Okay, then I'm going to take and begin to put some texture in this hat for fur, and I'm going to start with a U-gouge and just at random find some deep areas to knock in there just to get rid. See, it's smooth now, and we don't want that. We want it to be rough. Notice this straight line along this hat. I'm also going to come in here and niche out 4 or 5 places to break up that straight line that we've been talking about. And where I just said, see, I could reach in with the edge of a gouge. Better tighten my vise, trying to get away from me. With the edge of a gouge, I could just pull a niche out of there, maybe here. Okay, I might pilot this nose while I'm right here, just slightly here, and because the nose we might show halfway as a realistic type animal. Like I said, it's a dead coon on his head, so we're not really going to try to get too carried away with the way it looks, but we do want the shape of that coon. Now when you're hollowing those ears out, be very careful. You'll crack those. Well, that's a very good example. See how that tried to just leave the country on me? So I'm going to come in a different technique. The reason I even started to tell you that, because I've had that happen so many times. So then I'm going to take my knife and go at it a different way. This is a 3-way stop cut with my knife, right? I can begin to hollow it a little, then go back to my round gouge and soften them sharp edges. Of course, see, we don't want a sharp edge on that coon's ear. And these are a little big. I'm going to tone them down. I'm going to clean this line up around here, probably not on camera, because I'm burning up a lot of our time. And eventually I'm going to show a hollowing here where this coon's eye once was. We're after shadows, what we are there. Let's even accentuate that eye socket setup for the coon just to pull you into more of a, see that depth beginning to happen in there. You know, we're not going to try to show him no eye or anything like that, but then by the time this kind of sands out, and of course I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So you're breaking up this straight line, you know, kind of like I am right here. See, I'm putting some jagged edges in it at random. I'm going to try not to jab the face, but breaking that line up from side to side. Now, I'm going to, where I drew those black lines for that, that's the skin where they've actually skinned that away from the coon's face and all. And so I'm jaggeding the edge of it along here, right? This will become part of that nose depth. And yes, I will come in and get some depth like I did on the other side with the brow here. And of course that eye, the hollowing for that eye will fit right in here eventually too. Okay, on to a U-gouge to base in with on this. Okay, I've got this 1/4 inch number 9, And teardrop shapes would be the best explanation I could tell you for basing in for this fur. Giant teardrop shapes. Keep in mind it's fur, and we're just after to get some texture, some base started for it. See that straight line coming there? How I'm going to come right on through it. Look at there. Break that up some. Now I'm into the natural bark, so I'm going to kind of let the natural bark do the talking as far as saying fur over here on the side. But I am going to niche out several places. See that texture, man? I got it rocking and rolling there. I'm going to come over and do the same thing on this other side. So I'm going to work this coon, clean up around him. You guys will also see me begin to clean this line here and here very crisply and cleanly down along the back of that hat. The best way to do it would be with a larger flat gouge probably, and working here. I'm at the back of that coon's ear. So I'm taking this in at an angle, and I'm going to kill the background off right against the top of his hat, see? About like that. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, which that depth is really beginning to help this guy. See this here, I'm going to get a little deeper by bringing this downhill a little bit more and work this fur. So you students do that. We're going to get back together and we're going to go on this necklace down here at the bottom on the next step. So get caught up. Okay, I'm done roughing in with my U-gouge, going to a V-tool, continue to work the fur, maybe in smaller strokes, keep them moving. V-tooling the fur a little here and there, at random. No repetitious movements, students. Deeper here, lighter there. You students might notice that I've came in and drew a line of fur across here, and I've kind of mapped in some bear's claws, and I've also mapped in his collar, and I may even show some collars underneath that bear claw necklace. Now, I don't have anything finished to really show you much, but I do have a bronze of mine here with a bear claw necklace, and we can do a little reference on it. It's got this row of fur, which is actually like a mink or something like that, and they push these claws through it from the inside, and they're sticking out, and there is a row of beads in between there, if you want to get that tricky. Now, we may not get that tricky with the beads in this cottonwood bark. You might even try a medicine bag like this guy has hanging down there or something like that. But I just wanted to show you that. I'll set that down, and I'm going to show you how I'm going to start to get set up for this deal on the bottom. which I'm going to go with a V-tool first, where the necklace is beginning to come around his neck. Better tighten that bicep. Okay. This is the necklace, which is going to be the furthest out part sticking out, right? The fur. So let's bring it. Now keep in mind it comes up and around his neck, right? So don't just take it too straight out to the sides, because it won't be explained where it's going to. Okay. I'm going to begin to split down behind here for his collar, and we're going to go for quite a depth for his neck, back in and behind there. I'm going to swing this collar out, and it's the same way. It's going to go out. We might show a lapel type collar here. We might show a lapel type collar. We'll see how it comes along. But now, the main part that has to go down here is this portion here where his neck is. That's really going to have to go down. Of course, remember our lesson in shadowing? Well, this is going to give definite separation between what is his shirt collar and what is his neck by continuing to force this down and behind. All right? By pushing that down, we're gaining some height. I'm going to bring our card in here, right about here. All right, what we're doing, students, is this is actually going to be out a little further, and we're going to try to really shove this angle of this neck back and in there. And these claws will eventually fall out right in about here. This is going to be that row of fluff from the profile, so you can get an idea of why when I start carving in, I'm going to get a little deep right off the bat, and it's going to be kind of hard to explain. But I'm going to round plumb to the ends of the claws first. Pardon me. Got some of that bark dust, I think. All right, I'm rounding the claws all the way down. Now don't get too deep, because keep in mind, this neck that we take down deeper here is going to come out on his chest down here where I'm flat gouging now and bringing this up. This is eventually going to be his chest right here. So this all has to kind of jive together at the end of everything and make sense. Now, where I'm beginning to map each one of these claws in, we're going to go first to a V-tool and then to our 1/4 inch number 9 I'm looking for. Here we are. You could even go to a 3/8 number 9 if you wanted to, something. But I got my V-tool first, and where I had my claws drawn in here, I'm going to echo on each side of them. There. There. Claw number 2. I know my arm's in the way here, folks. There. Here. Notice how I'm curving these towards the inside the further I get away. Here, I'll curve it to the inside. Okay. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 claws across there beginning to map out. So what you can do is you can take a curved gouge. This is a number 9, maybe 3/8 wide. And where these claws actually are going to go over and disappear into that row of fur in a minute, I'm going to use this number 9 to map the top of that claw as it's going over and in. Okay, I'm going to come over here, map this claw in, here, and map this one in. Now, not only am I going to map the tops of the claws over and in, but look here what I'm going to do. I'm going to take that gouge and round the top of them claws over. That, man, that rounds them up nice. Look at there. Round that up. They are curved. I know my arm's probably in the way there. But so I'm starting to map those in. Then I'm going to take a number 5 And for instance, I'm going to come right along the edge of this and just set it right there. I'm going to take a little wider gouge. This is actually a 3, and I'm going to go to the outside of that claw here. Notice I'm going towards the outside with that cut, but see how I'm beginning to sharpen the end of the claw and set it down as more. I'm going to go ahead and use this number 3 on this next one. It works so well on that one. For instance, here I've got the curve of the number 3 towards me. I'm going to lift a little of that away where we can see that claw better. And I've got the natural curve of that number 3 along the edge of there. So I'm beginning to sharpen these up. Okay, I'm going to take a little flat gouge of some sort that will fit in between the claws here, see? And I'm going to begin to set a perimeter. In other words, from this line that I'm marking right here, around here, I'll set all my claws like I did. Then I'm going to begin to take this piece out of here. Now I want to caution you, students, that you will break those claws off there as you're taking this hunk of wood and this hunk of wood out from between the claws. I've done it so many times. So if you have to, once you get them mapped in like this, take your knife, come in along here and make a nice stop cut here, stop cut along the bottom of the fur, which I'm going to meander it some. In other words, waver it. Don't get straight lines on me now. We've talked about that. And I'm going to stop cut that real well, and that'll either let you clean up here with your knife. See that depth beginning to happen there? That'll either let you clean that up with your knife, or it'll let you reach in with a small little flat cleanup gouge of some sort and clean that up. Look at that depth I'm getting, and my claws hanging down. So I'm going to work this whole ring of claws like that. Now just before we go off this segment, let's come back to the neck right here, and I'm going to take my knife and I'm going to run this collar line pretty deeply. I know my hand's in the way here again, but in just a second I'll try to get where you can see. Now there's that dagger cut again, and that is very dangerous. Don't slide off and hurt yourself. Alright, here I am. I'm cutting along the collar. Now, the reason I made such a deep stop cut there, and I know I'm having difficulty being in front of the camera there with my hands, but it's just a bad spot. I've made a very deep stop cut along that neck. Now this is going to let me come in here. We're having some technical difficulties here. Okay. This is going to let me come in with a little gouge and begin to pull this depth out of here. Okay? So I'm going for real good depth there. And I'm going to shape that up around to his neck. Now this piece that's going to be the top of his leather shirt collars, I'm going to kind of work it the same way. I may work it more with a V-tool first, because see, it's sticking out quite a ways. So let's take it on down, but yet I want that shirt collar kind of hanging out. You know, have the effect that it's hanging forward, so it sure wouldn't hurt to take a U-gouge and begin to get some of this roll to that shirt that's hanging out there as you're gaining the depth. This is starting to make a little sense now. You know, you can see it. You can see the neck starting to go back. I can't afford to burn up a whole lot of our tape time showing you each and every one of these claws. So I'm going to go ahead off the screen, and I'm going to set my claws in. I'm going to depthen the neck. I'm going to get this fur depthened right along this area where it meets the shirt. Now keep in mind this is fur, so I'm going to waver. I know that's a straight line I just drew, but I will waver it much like we did here. See how we're wavering this and up just a little ways here, how I'm wavering it along the edge of the fur. So we want to break up any straight boring lines. So you guys there at home, go ahead and work your collar lines and this neckline and your claws here a ways, And when we get back together, I'm going to kind of show you what I got there. We'll be heading down the finishing stretch. Okay, students, I'm down to the sanding portion here. I have been working on this fur and this hair. You might notice that I've put in some stitches down here on the bottom of this guy, right in here for a shirt that's coming underneath the claws. I've got them carved. I've got a nail set in my hand, and see, I've got a strip of beadwork, and then this tails out into some fringe. So I've just taken this nail set, and this bark is so soft that I can sit here and just do a series that looks like beads. This is pretty decent. So I'm going to take some wore out 220. Now folks, this 220 is so wore out that you could almost use it for a tissue paper or something. But I do want to warn you, don't over sand your pieces. You can see this piece beginning to soften out. And the hair and the beard, all this stuff will begin to soften out. Move quickly, sand just enough to where you can see the features and the character lines in the face beginning to soften out. I'm going to spend, 20 minutes on this piece sanding it, and as soon as you and I get back together, I'm going to show you the finish that I'm going to put on this project. Okay, students, y'all might notice that I'm beginning to paint the polyurethane on this finished mountain man with his coonskin cap on. Notice how this bark with this polyurethane turns a nice red color. I want to caution you with using polyurethane to always stir it very well, because that can become a problem. It won't dry good if it's not stirred well. I'm using this particular brand. Note that I'm using the satin, the clear satin. And I'm going to just continue to paint this whole carving all the way over with it. Now, you may or may not get it on the bark. You can see I'm starting to here, the original bark. But this polyurethane will actually harden the outsides of this bark to where you won't scratch it. Like right now, you can scratch it with your fingernail or something that way. But I'm going to get this painted up here, and we'll give you guys a good close finish shot of it here in just a second. And I do want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Woodcarver's Corner. And if you have any questions or would like to write to me about various things, my address is Rex Branson, 816 Woodland Shores, Afton, Oklahoma. So we'll show you the finished product in just a moment.